The silent screen Captain Elena Rodriguez stood before the massive observation deck of Deep Space Station Omega, watching the dying red giant Arcturus slowly consume itself in the distance. The station orbited at what scientists called the death zone, close enough to study the star's final moments, but far enough to avoid being pulled into its gravitational embrace. Elena had been commanding this remote outpost for 3 years, monitoring deep space communications and watching for signs of hostile activity in the galaxy's outer rim. The station was humanity's farthest outpost, a testament to their species' drive to explore even the most dangerous regions of space. Built into a massive asteroid, Omega housed 200 of Earth's best scientists, engineers, and military personnel. Its primary mission was to serve as an early warning system for threats approaching human space, but Elena knew they were also pioneers, pushing the boundaries of what their species could achieve. Dr. Zara Okafor rushed into the command center, her dark face flushed with excitement and concern. As the station's chief xenobiologist, Zara had spent years studying the few alien artifacts they had discovered in this remote region. She was brilliant, dedicated, and had an uncanny ability to understand non-human patterns of thought. "Captain, you need to see this immediately," Zara said, her Nigerian accent thick with urgency. "We're receiving something unlike anything in our databases." Elena followed Zara to the communications array, where technicians were frantically adjusting their equipment. The main screen displayed wave patterns that seemed to pulse and shift like living things. The signals were not following standard electromagnetic principles. Instead, they appeared to be some form of psychic transmission, something humanity had only theorized about. "How long have we been receiving this?" Elena asked, studying the strange patterns. "Approximately 6 hours," replied Lieutenant Commander Torres, the station's communications officer. "But Captain, the signal is getting stronger. Whatever is sending this is either getting closer or becoming more desperate." Zara activated her translation protocols, running the signals through every linguistic and mathematical database they possessed. "Captain, I believe this is a distress call. The patterns suggest extreme urgency, fear, and something else. Pain. Incredible amounts of pain." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. In her 15 years of military service, she had never encountered anything that could broadcast psychic distress across interstellar distances. Whatever species was sending this signal possessed technology far beyond human understanding. The main screen suddenly filled with images that made everyone in the command center step backward. The signals had somehow bypassed their standard communications equipment and were projecting directly into their minds. Elena saw flashes of a beautiful crystalline world, beings of pure light and energy, and then something that made her stomach turn. Darkness was spreading across the planet like a living infection, consuming everything in its path. "My God," whispered Dr. Okafor, "they're showing us their world being destroyed." The mental images continued. Elena saw the aliens more clearly. Now, they were tall, elegant beings that seemed to be made of living crystal and light. Their cities were works of art that defied human understanding of architecture, growing from the ground like massive gemstones. But the darkness was consuming it all, turning beauty into horror. Then the images changed, showing the aliens themselves being attacked. The darkness did not just destroy their bodies. It was consuming their minds, stealing their thoughts and memories. Elena realized with growing horror that these beings were telepathic, and their enemy was feeding on their consciousness itself. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice shaking. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic core. Multiple contacts, moving at incredible speeds." Elena forced herself to focus on the tactical situation. How many contacts? It's difficult to say. The readings are unlike anything we've seen. They appear to be some form of living energy, traveling through space without ships. Dr. Okafor was still analyzing the psychic transmissions. Captain, I'm beginning to understand their language. They call themselves the Ethereals, and they're from a world called Lumina. The entity attacking them is something they call the Shadow Swarm. Elena studied the data streaming across their monitors. The Shadow Swarm appeared to be a parasitic consciousness that spread from world to world, consuming the mental energy of intelligent species. The Ethereals were perfect prey because their telepathic abilities made them vulnerable to psychic attack. Dr. Okafor, can you determine their location? Working on it, Zara replied, her fingers flying over her console. The psychic signal is coming from the Vega system, approximately 27 light-years from our position. Elena made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Torres, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha emergency protocols. The communication to Earth took several minutes due to the vast distance, but Admiral Harrison's face eventually appeared on the main screen. Elena quickly briefed him on the situation, showing the psychic recordings and sensor data they had collected. Captain Rodriguez, Admiral Harrison said after reviewing the information, you're requesting permission to take the 7th Fleet into uncharted space to assist an alien species we've never encountered, against an enemy we don't understand. Yes, sir. These beings are facing extinction, and this shadow swarm will not stop with one world. If it can consume consciousness itself, no telepathic species in the galaxy will be safe. Admiral Harrison was quiet for several moments. Elena knew he was considering the implications. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for so long that first contact protocols were mostly theoretical. Now they were facing a situation where their first meeting with another intelligent species would be in the context of interstellar war. Captain, what makes you think we can succeed where the Ethereals have failed? Their technology appears far more advanced than ours. Dr. Okafor stepped forward. Admiral, I believe I can answer that. The Shadow Swarm's primary weapon is psychic in nature. It attacks the mind directly, but humans are not telepathic. We may be the only species in the galaxy that is naturally immune to their primary attack method. Elena added, Sir, our weapons may be primitive compared to ethereal technology, but they're physical. Kinetic energy, chemical explosives, nuclear weapons. If this enemy is made of thought energy, physical attacks might be exactly what's needed. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. Very well, Captain. You have authorization to take the 7th Fleet to the Vega system. But Rodriguez, you'll be making first contact with an alien species while engaging in combat with another unknown entity. The political and military implications are staggering. Understood, sir. We won't let them face extinction alone. Within 12 hours, the 7th Fleet had assembled at Station Omega. Elena now commanded 18 of humanity's most advanced warships, including the flagship HMS Defiance, a massive dreadnought equipped with humanity's latest weapons technology. The fleet also carried 5,000 Marines and support personnel, prepared for ground combat if necessary. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Elena received one final transmission from the Ethereals. This time, the psychic signal was weaker, filled with desperation. Through Dr. Okafor's translation, she heard a voice that would haunt her dreams. To any who can hear our thoughts across the void, the voice said, our world dies. The darkness consumes all. We are Ambassador Keleth of the Ethereal Council. If there are others among the stars who value consciousness and freedom, please remember us. Do not let the shadows find you. Elena activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Captain Rodriguez. We are about to make humanity's first contact with an alien species. These beings face extinction from an enemy that feeds on consciousness itself. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors. We carry with us the hopes of 2 species. All ships jump to hyperspace. The 18 human warships vanished into the void, racing toward a battle that would determine the fate of an entire civilization. Behind them, Station Omega continued to monitor the psychic transmissions from Lumina, watching as the signals grew weaker and more desperate. With each passing hour, Dr. Okafor remained at her station, analyzing every fragment of ethereal communication she could intercept. She began to understand that the ethereals had tried everything. Their energy weapons passed harmlessly through the shadow swarm. Their telepathic abilities only made them easier targets. Their advanced shields could not protect against an enemy that attacked the mind directly. Asterisk. But humans were different. Humans had evolved on a hostile world where survival required constant physical struggle. Their minds were chaotic, unpredictable, and most importantly, closed to psychic intrusion. They were the perfect weapon against an enemy made of pure thought. As the human fleet traveled through hyperspace toward Lumina, Elena studied everything they knew about their enemy. The shadow swarm appeared to be a collective consciousness that had been spreading across the galaxy for millennia. It consumed other minds to grow stronger, learning the knowledge and abilities of each species it destroyed. The ethereals had sent probes and recordings showing the swarm's method of attack. It would descend on a world like a living storm cloud, penetrating the minds of its inhabitants and draining their consciousness. The victims remained alive, but became empty shells, their bodies controlled by the collective will of the swarm. Elena realized that humanity was about to face its greatest test. They were no longer fighting for resources or territory. They were fighting for the very concept of individual consciousness, for the right of thinking beings to exist as separate entities rather than components of a hive mind. The battle for Lumina would determine whether the galaxy would remain a place of diverse, independent species or become consumed by a single omnipresent darkness that turned all thought into its own twisted reflection. Asterisk. The storm unleashed. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega system, and Elena Rodriguez felt her heart sink at what they saw. Lumina, the ethereal homeworld, was a sphere of crystalline beauty half shrouded in living darkness. The shadow swarm had manifested as massive black clouds that pulsed with stolen consciousness, covering continents like a cancer. "Sweet Mother of God," whispered General Marcus Steele, commander of the fleet's ground forces. The grizzled veteran had fought in 3 interplanetary conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this sight. "It's like the planet is being eaten alive." Dr. Zara Okafor stood at the sensor station, tears streaming down her face as she analyzed the psychic emanations from the planet's surface. "Captain, I'm detecting millions of ethereal life signs, but they're all wrong. Their consciousness patterns are fragmented, incomplete. The swarm is draining them slowly, keeping them alive to extend the feeding process." Elena activated the tactical display, showing the distribution of shadow swarm entities across Lumina's surface. The darkness was not random. It had created massive hive structures that pulsed with dark energy, connected by tendril-like formations that spread across the planet like a nervous system. "Lieutenant Chun, launch reconnaissance drones. I want detailed scans of those hive structures," Elena ordered. Lieutenant Sarah Chun was humanity's best pilot, a woman who could fly anything with engines and had reflexes enhanced by neural implants. Her drones streaked toward the planet, their sensors probing the alien constructs. The data they returned was disturbing. "Captain, the hive structures appear to be built from processed ethereal technology. The swarm is using their own cities against them, turning their crystalline architecture into feeding chambers." Elena studied the tactical situation. The shadow swarm had established 7 major hive complexes across Lumina's surface. Each one was defended by swarms of dark entities that moved through space without ships, pure consciousness given form and malevolent purpose. General Steele, What's your assessment for ground operations? The general reviewed the planetary scans. It'll be rough, Captain. Those hive structures are massive, and we don't know what kind of defenses they have beyond the flying nightmares. But my Marines are ready. We've trained for hostile environment operations, and this qualifies. Suddenly, the fleet's communication systems activated without input from the crew. A voice filled with crystalline harmonics spoke directly into their minds, bypassing their technological interfaces entirely. "Unknown vessels," the voice said. "This is Commander Thane of the Ethereal Defense Corps. Your minds are strange to U.S., clouded and protected in ways we have never encountered. Are you allies of the darkness?" Elena stepped forward, speaking aloud while Dr. Okafor worked to establish a proper communication link. "Commander Thane, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez. Of the human 7th Fleet, we received your distress call and have come to help. We are not allies of the Shadow Swarm." The psychic silence that followed lasted several seconds. Then Commander Thane's voice returned, filled with amazement and hope. "Humans, your species name translates strangely in our language. You speak of concepts we do not understand. Individual minds separate from the collective consciousness. How is this possible?" Dr. Okafor managed to establish a stable communication channel, allowing real-time translation between the species. Elena could now see Commander Thane on her main screen. The ethereal was tall and graceful, his crystalline body radiating soft blue light even in his desperate situation. "Commander, we don't have time for a full cultural exchange. Your world is under attack, and we're here to help. But I need to understand your enemy better. How does the Shadow Swarm fight?" "Commander." Thane's expression grew grim. "The darkness attacks the mind directly. It consumes consciousness, turning our own thoughts against us. Our weapons cannot harm beings made of pure psychic energy. Our shields are useless against enemies that attack from within our own minds." Elena exchanged glances with General Steele. "Commander, what if I told you that humans are not telepathic? Our minds are naturally shielded from psychic attack." The hope in Commander Thane's eyes was visible even across species barriers. "If this is true, then you may be the answer to our prayers. But how can non-telepathic beings possibly understand the nature of consciousness itself?" General Steele stepped forward. "Sir, we understand consciousness just fine. We call it staying alive. And humans have gotten very good at that over the centuries." Elena began outlining her battle plan. The human fleet would divide into 3 groups. The main battle group would engage the Shadow Swarm entities in space, drawing their attention away from the planet. The bombardment group would target the hive structures with kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. The ground assault group would land troops to rescue trapped ethereals and destroy the hive complexes from within. Commander Thane will need ethereal survivors to guide our ground teams to the most critical locations. Can you provide us with tactical intelligence? Yes. Captain Rodriguez, I will transmit what data we have remaining. But I must warn you that darkness learns from each encounter. It will adapt to your methods of attack. Elena smiled grimly. Commander, adaptation requires predictability. Humans specialize in being unpredictable. The battle began with the human fleet advancing toward Lumina in a formation that defied conventional military tactics. Instead of organized groups, the ships moved in seemingly random patterns that made no strategic sense to outside observers. This chaos was intentional. Elena had learned from studying the Shadow Swarm's previous victories that it defeated enemies by analyzing their tactics and developing countermeasures. Asterisk. The Shadow Swarm entities rose from the planet's surface like a dark tide, thousands of consciousness-based beings moving in perfect coordination. They had expected to encounter the same organized resistance they had faced from 17 other species. Instead, They found Chaos. Lieutenant Shun led the first attack wave, her fighter squadron diving toward the planet in erratic patterns while broadcasting human music at maximum volume. The cacophony of rock, jazz, classical, and electronic music created a psychic noise that disrupted the swarm's coordination. "Unknown energy forms," she reported over the communications channel. "The enemy doesn't know how to respond to our flight. Patterns. They keep trying to predict our movements, but we're not following any doctrine they understand." The shadow swarm attempted to probe the human pilots' minds, seeking to understand their tactical thinking. What they found was chaos. Human consciousness was a storm of contradictory thoughts, emotions, and memories. Unlike the organized, harmonious minds of telepathic species, human thoughts were random, unpredictable, and often irrational. Elena watched as the enemy formations began to falter. "All ships, begin orbital bombardment. Target the hive structures with kinetic rounds." The human fleet opened fire with weapons the shadow swarm had never encountered. Instead of energy beams that could be absorbed or deflected, the humans used solid projectiles traveling at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles followed, creating explosions that disrupted the psychic fields maintaining the hive structures. General Steele led the ground assault, his Marines deploying in dropships toward the planet's surface. As they entered Lumina's atmosphere, they encountered something unprecedented. The shadow swarm entities that tried to attack their minds recoiled in pain and confusion. "This is Steele to all ground units," the general reported. "The enemy can't handle our thought patterns. Maintain active mental exercises. Think about anything chaotic, random, or emotional." The human Marines landed near the largest hive complex, a towering structure of corrupted ethereal crystal that pulsed with dark energy. Inside, they could see the faint forms of trapped ethereals, their crystalline bodies dim and motionless as their consciousness was slowly drained. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad into the hive complex, using explosives to blast through walls. That had been designed to channel psychic energy rather than resist physical force. Captain Rodriguez, we're inside the primary hive. The ethereals are alive but barely conscious. It's like they're in some kind of induced coma. Dr. Okafor, monitoring. From the fleet, analyzed the readings from the ground teams. Sergeant, the hive is using the ethereals as living batteries, drawing power from their consciousness to maintain itself. If you can disrupt the psychic conduits, it should free them. The human Marines move through the hive complex like a force of nature, their chaotic thoughts causing the shadow swarm entities physical pain. The swarm had evolved to consume organized, telepathic consciousness. Human minds were like psychic poison to them, thoughts so random and contradictory that they caused feedback in the collective consciousness. Elder Voss, the leader of the Ethereal Council, was being held in the center of the hive complex. When Sergeant Santos found him, the ancient being was barely alive, his crystalline form flickering with the last remnants of his consciousness. "Human," Elder Voss whispered through the translation device Santos carried, "your thoughts are like fire. In the darkness, how do you maintain such chaos in your minds?" Santos grinned as she set explosive charges around the psychic conduits. "Sir, you're talking to a species that evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. Chaos is our natural state." The explosions that followed disrupted the hive's power systems, freeing hundreds of ethereal prisoners. As they awakened, their natural telepathic abilities began to return, and they joined their consciousness with the human ground. Forces in an unprecedented form of cooperation, Elena watched from the flagship as the tide of battle turned. The shadow swarm, faced with an enemy they could not understand or predict, began to retreat from Lumina's surface. But she knew this was only the beginning. "Dr. Okafor, are you detecting any other swarm entities in this system?" "Negative, Captain. But I'm picking up psychic echoes from other star systems." "This isn't over." The Shadow Swarm will adapt to our methods and return with different tactics. Elder Voss, now recovered enough to communicate clearly, appeared on the main screen. Captain Rodriguez, your species has given us something we thought was lost forever. Hope. But the darkness spreads across many worlds. Will you help us carry this war to other systems? Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing determination in every face. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors of consciousness itself. Elder Voss, the Shadow Swarm made one critical mistake. They attacked a species under human protection. We don't abandon our allies, and we don't let bullies win. The war for the galaxy's consciousness has just begun, and humanity is ready to fight. The rescue of Lumina was complete, but Elena knew it was only the first battle in a much larger war. Across the galaxy, other species faced the same threat, and many would not survive without help. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, to be the chaos that disrupts tyranny, the unpredictable force that breaks the chains of oppression. The Shadow Swarm had consumed thousands of worlds by imposing order through the consumption of consciousness. But they had never encountered a species that thrived on chaos, that found strength in unpredictability, and that refused to surrender their individual thoughts to any collective will. The war for the galaxy's freedom had begun, and humanity would lead the charge **.